Welcome to the ADHD GO Webinar Series Week 4. This week we will be talking about ADHD behavior and how to modify your behavior so that you're always reacting at your best in interpersonal communications, with projects, and even internally when you talk to yourself and evaluate your progress. So you're always running a program, and that program was likely installed by your family of origin and your experiences and circumstances growing up. And your behavior all stems from this unconscious programming that you really had very little say in. So it's important to begin to replace that unconscious programming with programs and patterns of behavior that you put there intentionally. So whether it's your emotions, your thoughts, or the behaviors that result, you need to work on strengthening the mechanisms which control and modify those reactions. So to get started, it's important to think about what is ideal for you. So I like to consider what my perfect day looks like, run through all the activities that might be involved, look at it from the perspective of things you'd like to avoid, and just really understand what would be a really stress-free experience for your perfect day. And that can tell you a lot about what your ideal circumstances are and what you'd like to avoid. Many times you'll be motivated to perform a negative pattern of behavior, something that's problematic or not really useful to you, something that you don't like, because of external pressure that you will usually come in the form of FOG, which is an acronym for fear, obligation, and guilt, the shoulds in your life. So it's important that you figure out what it is you want to focus on. What are the flowers in your garden, so that you can spend your time watering the flowers instead of the weeds, which are, those activities or behaviors or thoughts that someone else wanted you to take care of. Some emotional obstacles here are some common ones listed here. They could crop up anywhere throughout your day and derail you. So one of the most important exercises for dealing with your emotions and learning to control and regulate your own emotions is to visualize the feeling. Make it a thing that's sort of separate from yourself. Find the feeling in your body, give it a color, give it a weight and a texture, give it a shape, and label that emotion. Give it a name for whatever that emotion feels like to you. Acknowledge that it's there, and don't try to struggle or fight against it, because it will disappear all on its own. Fixating on it is the only thing that can really reinforce it and make it last longer. So acknowledge that it's there, and then go back to whatever it is that you wanted to be doing anyway. A great way to remember to do this is, again, always be willing to take a pause in your day, do a little bit of breathing, just observe your breathing, find the breath relaxing you as you slow down, and then you'll be able to really objectively assess what it is that's bothering you and what you want and how to best move forward. So stress is always going to make things harder. Shame is never useful. Self-blame, most things aren't actually your fault, or the thing that you got wrong is generally a very small part of the whole. Grief is something that you might have to feel and get through it. Again, it will pass. Dread is an important emotional obstacle to take apart because it usually comes from consistent failure at something without understanding why you are failing. So maybe you feel like you're really bad with job interviews, so you dread job interviews, but maybe it's because some of your symptoms were causing you to fail to get the job often, which now gives you that feeling of dread because you think you're sure to fail. So once you understand the obstacles, the expectations involved, and your own condition better, then you won't naturally dread those experiences and you can actually get excited about them again. And then fatigue is obviously sets in because many times atypicals are required to exert a lot more effort than neurotypicals just to do simple tasks. Maybe a neurotypical could do something on autopilot that requires the full attention of an atypical person, and so that can lead to fatigue, which is also very similar to an emotional obstacle. So make sure that you're always protecting your focus from these drains on your emotions and on your energy. Designate a safe friend to check in with. It can be nice to have some accountability so you can just talk things out. Also, therapists are great for this. You can use positive talk to pump yourself up, fill yourself with positive mantras so that there's no room for these negative emotions. And don't make assumptions about what other people are thinking. Don't get on the train with that emotional that problematic emotion and start making assumptions and mind reading what other people are thinking and making that emotion bigger and bigger by feeding it. Just take 5, work on your breathing, and express your feelings by writing it down if it helps or talking to someone. But all those emotions will pass. So those are some great treatments for working through those things. Okay, cognitive obstacles can really be summed up by this concept of automatic negative thoughts, and there are quite a few negative thoughts that can kind of be grouped into main categories. So overgeneralizing, when you see the same problem in everything. Personalizing, when you make a problem about yourself. Catastrophizing, when you take something that's not really a problem and make it into a much larger situation that seems like a big problem. Trying to mind read, like I said, if you feel emotional about something, then maybe you start telling yourself, everybody hates me, everybody thinks I did a bad job, something like that. You can't read people's minds, so don't try. Self-fulfilling prophecy, thinking that you'll fail, so you fail. Magnification or minimization, this is the blowing things up or diminishing things. Self-shaming, labeling, blame, and a negative lens. These things are all different types of automatic negative thoughts, and they start out small, but the thing about automatic negative thoughts is they're like the insect ants, in that if there's 1 or 2, it's not a big deal, but pretty soon if you don't start taking care of the ants in some way or moving away from them, then they're going to build up and they're going to become a real nuisance that's impossible to contain, and it's going to really make things terrible for you. So you need to crush ants before they become a nuisance, and you can do that by challenging those negative thoughts. And especially with recurring negative thoughts that you can predict their onset, you can have challenges and positive mantras ready to diffuse those and crush those ants right away. And then we'll have behavioral obstacles. So this is when your thought or your emotion actually then you follow through with some kind of physical action. So procrastination is a good example of this. Insecurity, the desire to avoid certain feelings, can really contribute to putting off tasks, because procrastination isn't laziness. It's not about avoiding the work in itself. It's really about avoiding the feelings that are associated with the work of succeeding or failing at it, and the different tasks required. It's about avoiding those feelings and some kind of insecurity almost all the time. And the best way to extinguish those fears is with curiosity. Curiosity is the natural enemy of boredom, procrastination, lack of passion and desire. Wherever you can find curiosity and ignite your curiosity, you will not have problems completing tasks and with urgency. You'll do great. Perfectionism is an excuse for never finishing a task. We feel paralyzed by it, but if we have this excuse that we wanted to make it perfect and it wasn't perfect yet, we can avoid the anxiety that comes with criticism of that task. This is about not wanting to feel vulnerable and not have your work be criticized. It's kind of tied into rejection-sensitive dysphoria. So remember with perfectionism that if something is worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. So give yourself permission to do a bad job and recognize that it's not a reflection of who you are and your value as a person. Just do the best you can with the time that you have, because done is better than perfect. It's always better than perfect. And you'll never get to perfect anyway. It's an illusion, like becoming neurotypical. Future nearsighted is another behavioral obstacle. I've talked about this a lot with setting deadlines, but atypicals tend to be oblivious of the future and underestimate how long things will take. So improving your ability to think ahead, estimate how long things take, and deliver on deadlines are critical skills for atypicals to work on. So consistent use of your calendar and those other essential tools that we talked about in Module 2 can really help with this. Next, a behavioral obstacle could be popcorn thoughts. When thoughts pop up, we want to prioritize them at the top of the list right away. Any kind of stimuli that pops up, we always want to put it at number one and bump whatever else we were doing. So get in the habit of writing down your popcorn thoughts immediately in your treatment notebook as they come up, to just kind of vent that thought and then get right back over to what you're doing. But it's okay to write it down, schedule a time for it, but it's not time to think through all the possibilities that popcorn thought represents. So try to avoid and modify that behavior. The last one is the first thing you do. So the first thing you do in the morning sets the tone for the whole day. So try to put off a negative distraction as long as possible. For instance, if I'm constantly getting distracted by mobile gaming, then I want to see how long in the day I can put off my first taste of that sweet mobile gaming candy. Or and on the flip side of that, setting myself up with positive activities in the morning too. So again, maybe I eat my frogs first and I'm sending emails or making phone calls right at the beginning of the day. Or maybe it's just something that I really enjoy, but it's also something that's good for me, like exercise. Whatever it is, set yourself up for a good day, a productive day with that first thing you do, and try to put off the distractions as long as you possibly can. Okay. As we begin to understand how to address these behavioral, emotional, and cognitive challenges that we've just gone over, the key piece of all of this is awareness, a sense of present mindfulness that can help us act with conscious intention from moment to moment. So how do we build up awareness about what we're doing? Well, it's a little bit like stepping back and observing yourself as if you were another person, Separate the observer from the body that the observer inhabits and just watch yourself. A good exercise for this is the helicopter exercise, where you imagine you're watching yourself from a helicopter, and where do you go and what do you do that you can observe from that helicopter throughout your day. What do you notice about your routines, and how do you choose to spend your time, and where do you spend your time in comparison to your ideals, to get some of those high-level observations. The next awareness exercise that can help is the inner child. This is a really big one, but it all comes back to your adult self talking to your child self in a compassionate way about what your child self understands about the world, their beliefs, and how they chose to deal with the realities of their situation versus what your adult self is now capable of. So ask your child self, what are you afraid of? How do you protect yourself? And then ask your present self, do those behaviors still serve me? And how can I thank my child self for, addressing those challenges the way they did, and reassuring them that now we can do it in a more beneficial way. Your adult self needs to reassure your child self that things are different now and they're safe to pursue the things that they want. Next one is inner guardians. Inner guardians is a really helpful exercise where we take 3 people that you could always count on to protect you and give you positive encouragement. These people can be fictional, they can be real, they can be people you know or people you don't know. It's okay to choose comic book characters for this. Just somebody that makes you feel safe and is always going to give you positive encouragement. And when you're struggling with something, consider those inner guardians. What would they say to you about your struggle? How would they make you feel about it and interpret the situation? What advice would they give you? And then once you've had some time to sort of cultivate these inner guardians and be in dialogue with them about some of your struggles, I think it's an interesting observation to look at it from the perspective of the guardians you chose. What do their qualities say about you as a person? And I think you'll find that the inner guardians you choose reflect your highest values and really who you are and who you want to be at your best. It's going to be some combination of those inner guardians. They will embody different aspects of you. The next one is inner castle. So this is just about starting with a room that's safe for you to be whatever you want to be with absolutely no external pressure. You are going to be able to listen to your own music, decorate however you want. It's totally safe and nobody can come in unless you allow it. And I recommend never inviting anybody else in there. And when you feel comfortable, maybe create some other mental rooms around this room which are okay for other people to come into. But you can always have that safe space which no one else is allowed in. This is the perfectly quarantined garden of your mind. This is where you're allowed to experience yourself and any thoughts, and you don't let any other thoughts from the outside world intrude on the sanctity of that. And that can be really nice to feel safe going through what you're going through and loving yourself. Outburst therapy is using sort of, some people call it like primal scream therapy, but it's really just having a nice outpouring of emotions. Having a good cry is like a very basic way. Screaming out in the woods. You can lay on your back in bed and kick your arms and legs. Or just maybe watch a movie that makes you cry. But having an outburst of emotions can be really cathartic and really put you in touch with expressing something that you're going through in a way that really demonstrates a heightened awareness of your state. Attitude and choice is just a reminder that it's important to look for new choices, which you can always make, and understand that your choices give you power and fulfillment. It's that sense of agency that's going to make you excited. The fact that you can express yourself and your curiosity about the world. Remember that you should always be you're always in motion, so don't resist that motion, and understand that that motion is composed of the choices about what you're doing moment to moment. So be empowered by the fact that you can make choices, and there's always new choices that are exciting out there if you're just open to receiving them. Then the thought and emotion record is really just keeping a record of your thoughts and emotions in your notebook, or you could use a mood tracking app to identify those common cycles that you go through. And when you encounter a challenge that feels like a failure, try to put it into context when you write about it or talk to someone about it. Ask yourself, could this setback have happened to anyone? And what could you have done differently? And this is going to make it a positive experience and give you an opportunity to come up with a useful statement for the next time something like this happens. Next, we'll talk again about mantras. These are things that are going to make you slow down, regain awareness, and recalibrate to your desired outcome based on the new information. Some examples of mantras. It's okay to be who I am. I am lovable and I can be loved. I am enough. I don't need to change anything special. I never need to apologize for being myself. Don't leave any room in your body for negative thoughts. Constantly try to be coming up with different ways to talk about yourself and what you're doing positively. Practice that, and it's really going to leave no room for negativity. Remembering is sometimes difficult for atypicals, so it's important that we spend extra time and effort trying to make a strong memory in the first place. And there are several ways to do that. First, pause or slow down. Take the time that it takes and give the attention required to form a lasting memory. Next, repeat something about the situation that seems important to you or some kind of marker several times to yourself. Run through it in your head several times. Take that extra repetition. Saying something 3 times in a row, there's a reason they do it in marketing with phone numbers or web addresses. It helps us remember. Next is sensory visualization. Obviously, a smell can be strongly tied to memory, so be open to the texture of things. Run through what something feels like, sounds like several times in your head, maybe with your eyes closed. Make a picture of what you want to remember in your mind and focus on recreating the details of each one of your senses. This also can help from an emotional sort of memory. You can focus on the emotions surrounding a memory and sort of use that as a marker to retain a stronger memory of that situation, much like you can use your senses. Novel association. You can associate what you want to remember with another thing. So one of the most common ones that I talk about is parking in a strange parking place or at an angle, or just remembering the light pole that was near you, but taking one thing and hooking it to another thing. In this case, your parking place can be a really important way to find your car. And it can help with loads of other things, especially with their location where you put things down. Similar to that is hooking information onto other things, but I like to use little mnemonic devices when I hook information. So for instance, if I'm trying to remember someone's name, I might associate the first letter of their name with something else. Larry Lamb. Larry Lamb. And now I remember that guy's name is Larry. Or a rhyme, Sean Pawn. So now I remember that guy's name is Sean because I think of the chess piece whenever I see that guy. The next one is mind palaces. This is kind of like your inner castle in a way, but it expands further, and it's a mnemonic device that is also called the method of loci. And this is when you visualize the things you need to remember sort of as objects, and you imagine putting those objects around a room or in a palace in your mind. And maybe each room has a different object, or the rooms are themed around different types of information you need to remember. But you can then visualize the things in that room, like a green lampshade on a tall lamp that's flickering, and I can put my dentist appointment time on the table next to that lamp. So now I have a memory strongly associated with that piece of information, and each morning or each evening before I go to bed, I can sort of wander through my mind palace and say, oh yeah, these are those important little things that I placed in that room. And that can be a great way to remember things. And then of course, routines. This is just another way of saying repetition, but take it from your short-term memory and dump it into your long-term memory by using a routine. And that's really the best way for you to remember something long-term. Building confidence, motivation, and intention. You should be constantly feeding yourself positivity, so outsource encouragement. Get other people to tell you how great you are all the time. You should be having people around you who are going to build you up, support you, and tell you how cool your ideas are. So get those people on board, even if that means hiring them like a coach. This is really important for you to shake off that stress, listen to yourself, and believe in yourself and your ideas, because you need to care and be unafraid of failure, because whatever you're trying to do is so cool. It would even be fine to fail at doing this thing because it's exciting and fun and you're really into it. So care by constantly pumping yourself up and understanding that it's your choice. You get to decide, you have to decide, so get on board and enjoy your agency. All right. Prioritizing is one of the toughest things for an atypical. As I've talked about, we tend to prioritize whatever is happening right now, and often that can be a distraction that suddenly takes top of the queue in our mental sort of subconscious list of priorities. So it's important to, let's start with stick to the plan. It's important to stick to the plan because this is how we stop our mind. This is how we prevent ourselves in that crossroads moment from just pursuing whatever the new stimuli is. We can resist this urge by having a plan and sticking to that, and also having a reliable way to screen new information, a list of your popcorn thoughts that you can just put away and then get back to the plan. You've really got to white knuckle that plan. Next, let's talk about making criteria. So prioritizing things should be done in a list of urgent and important, which are your A tasks, important but not urgent, which are your B tasks, and interesting but not important or urgent, which are your C tasks. So give those things a letter, finish them in order ABC, and then within that ABC order of prioritization, you could break it down with a little number if you want to say this is the first A task I should do. Do all your A tasks first, but maybe you want to figure out, even within the 2 or 3 that you might have, which is the one that is important that I really prioritize and focus on first. Finally, there is the palate cleanser, which is a quick action that can help you reset and resume your intended activity for when you do get caught focusing on something that isn't necessarily part of the plan. Maybe you need to get up out of your workstation, take a little walk, get a glass of water, and just have the palate of your brain cleansed so that you can get back to the plan with the proper focus and attention. To set priorities, you are going to need to have clear goals. So how do you make a clear goal which you can set as a priority? Make it a SMART goal. A SMART goal has 5 components. It is specific. So what exactly do I want to accomplish? I like to build a deck outside of my house. Measurable. How will you know when it is accomplished? There will be a deck outside of my house. Achievable. Is it realistic that you can accomplish the goal based on available resources like time, skill, and materials? Let's see. Next month, hammer, nails, wood, saw, and maybe a couple friends to help. Yes, it is achievable. Is it relevant? Does accomplishing this goal advance my greater interests? I'd like to spend more time outside appreciating the birds and the nice weather. So yes, this does advance my greater interests. I'll probably be exercising more and spending more time in nature. And is it time-based? How long will this take? It should take 1 week, probably mostly on Saturday and Sunday, my weekend. So let's say I'm estimating a total of 12 hours over a week-long period. So I've made a SMART goal for this deck building project, and you can use this for anything, and it really differentiates a feeling, a desire that you have that's just a feeling, to a concrete goal that's actually achievable. Okay, planning and progress. So now that you have your goals, you know how to prioritize those goals, how do you plan to execute them and measure your progress? So first, set a meeting with yourself for planning. You need to take this seriously. So make planning feel more important by pretending it's a meeting with another person. So make your plan and make a plan to remember. So set yourself an alarm, some kind of notification or reminder that you are going to that planning meeting with yourself and you're taking it very seriously. Next, have a planning check-in where you can ask yourself simple questions like, why am I doing this? What results do I desire? And what are the steps? And most importantly, is the next step clear and vivid in my mind? Then you'll want to plan in reverse. So start with the deadline when you want to have this finished and work backwards to the present, setting milestones as you go, just like with all your other deadlines. Then there are a few problems that interfere with planning. That's mostly lack of a plan, lack of a clear plan in particular. Also, any kind of chaos is distracting. So the more kind of structure you can put around your plan and the execution, the more you can move efficiently toward your destination. So really look ahead to what could be the internal distractions that prevent me from achieving this plan. They could be physical, emotional, it could be the pace that you're working at, external stress, and then expectations rather, and then external distractions, which are just uncontrollable sensory stimuli like a smell or a sound that distracts you. Those also can derail your planning and your progress. Then finally, momentum. Remember that any route that's been well traveled is going to become easier to travel in the future. So build momentum towards completing these tasks by staying in motion And the more tasks you complete, the more small victories you count and you really feel emotionally attached to, the easier it's going to be to make those big strides. And anytime you're feeling insecurity or fear, just remember to go back to your curiosity. Rely on your curiosity to diffuse that insecurity, and remember to celebrate those small victories. Play. Play is a very important part of your behavior remaining appropriate, well-regulated, and not getting too caught up in any sort of emotional neuroses. Play is simply purposeless fun. There's no goal. It doesn't need to be productive. It doesn't need to make you money. It doesn't need to win you accolades. It's just voluntary curiosity and experimentation, which has an inherent attraction, but doesn't really need to accomplish anything else. It's just things humans do. You can draw a picture without the intention of ever becoming an artist or selling this or practicing for anything even. You just are drawing a picture because it's something that humans do to pass the time. It does something in our brain that is enjoyable. Just fun, just play. So think about what would be on your fun menu, and that'll make it easier to reach out and say, like, okay, I've got some free time, I'm feeling stressed, I could use a little bit of play. Now you know what's on your menu. You have some ideas about where to start, so you can just go to it quickly. And then take little delights, like maybe a piece of candy, or taking a different route somewhere. Little things that you can add to your day that are just woven into it to make it a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit more novel. Just think about a few things that you could do that would be little surprises that you plant in the day that aren't whole activities, but it's just a nice thing for you. Remember to schedule fun first on your calendar so you prioritize it and conceptualize how you use your time in relation to getting to fun, which is, what life should in large part be about. Productivity, yes, but fun. Productivity for fun. And then relaxation, different than fun, different than play. When you're relaxing, your brain is, again, doing something different. Meditation is relaxing. But pretty much anything else you could be doing is not relaxing. Relaxing is just laying in the sun, just listening to the sound of the ocean. Then finally, gamify tasks so that you can make tasks that you would have normally tried to avoid into actually fun things. So you can have a race. You can race against yourself, the time it takes to complete a certain repetitive task. You can have a point system and rewards attached to the point system for every time you do things. You could visualize your tasks as dragons or evil villains and set up action figures that you knock down with each task you complete. Finally, you can visualize things in terms of progress bars and skill checks. Even when I'm, even when I'm in the worst meeting, I can see the progress bar on that meeting filling up, and I just sit there smiling at it, and I can remain engaged because I know it will end. And this little game mechanic reminds me that the end is near, and I just have to keep hitting skill checks until that progress bar fills. All right, personal identity. The outward trappings of your identity are shown through your clothes, your hygiene, your presence, the way you carry yourself. How you dress is something that, of course, makes a statement no matter what. I personally think it would be great if we could all run around naked and nobody's trying to project any sort of communication to each other. We're all just humans. But that's not the world we live in, and so your clothes are going to say something about you. It's important that you are intentional about what that message is, because otherwise the message is, I didn't care what I looked like because I don't really care what I'm saying, which means I don't really know who I am. the clothes bring into focus some assumptions that people can have about you. So try to make those assumptions what you would want them to be. If that assumption is, I don't care what I look like, I don't buy into this whole fashion thing, that's fine, but it's a very low energy statement. So one way to get around you don't need to become a fashionista to get around this. You can do very rudimentary, very simple things to live your life in a way that expresses that you're excited about yourself and you know who you are, and you're not just a low energy person who's making the most basic choices. A way to avoid the stress of how do I dress every day but still look like you care is to have sort of a uniform, right? Like all solid colors, or maybe for a while you're the person that only wears all black things. These are ways to kind of find out what looks good, what works for you, what you get compliments on, and then get more of that outfit, that uniform, into your wardrobe so that you can lessen the decision fatigue that it takes to get dressed in the morning. Because really you only have so many decisions that you want to make in a day, so why spend that thinking too much about your outfit? So that's a good system. A way to find out what clothes really appeal to you and what works is to use the hanger trick to find out what you actually wear and what you feel comfortable in. Every time you wear something, or face all your hangers in the same direction, and then every time you wear something, turn the hanger around. And now you're starting to identify what hangers don't get turned, therefore what pieces of clothing you never wear and don't really represent who you are. It's going to tell you something and hopefully make you more aware and give you a better insight into how you express yourself visually. Then hygiene, of course, it's super important. Cleanliness is next to godliness. This is, again, how you take care of yourself. Who you are on a subconscious level is reflected in your hygiene. Not only the clutter around your house, but the clutter on your body. So make sure that you're always clean and well pressed in as much as you possibly can be. And then finally, presence. This might be the biggest one for me. Presence is almost like exercise because it takes effort to have a presence. It is who you are, but it's also a communication that you're constantly having on sort of a low level. So think about what kind of energy you exude. Is it calm or is it anxious? Are your movements deliberate and steady, or fidgety and quick? Do you perform tasks with sort of workmanlike efficiency, or are you obviously laboring to do your work? Your posture, is it expansive or does it contract? And are you non-reactive and sort of like steadfast in your composure, or are you compliant or even hyper-reactive? Do you constantly go with whatever idea is in the air, whichever way the wind is blowing? These all represent two sides of presence, high status and low status. And neither of them is bad. It's just the kind of energy that you exude. Think about that and think about how frenetic you are, which is more low status and sort of easily influenced, versus how steadfast you are and solid, which is more of a high status thing and it's calm and composed. Creativity is something that is often associated with atypical thinking and rightly so. We have a lot of inspired ideas as atypicals because we are able to dive into that pool of all the information and all the stimulus we've ever gotten and just pull up these wacky connections that wouldn't occur to most neurotypicals. But our symptoms and the constraints of society can also hamper our creative growth or even cause us to abandon our creative pursuits entirely. We often tell ourselves once we start going to school and more restrictions are placed on our behavior that my creativity isn't important anyway. Maybe we get criticized and we get embarrassed, and then we don't want to share that. We don't want to explore the creative natures of ourselves. But as I said before, creativity is hugely important for your mental health, and it's not something that we need to be good at or do for anyone else or monetize. So it's important to take pressure off yourself for what your creative spirit has to be. It's just an expression of curiosity. It's a way to play. It's something we naturally do. So begin to explore your creative identity again, build your creative competence, and enjoy the emotional connection that you start to build with the things you create. A lot of times this can take a big change in your life, something that jars you back into exploring your creativity as sort of a survival mechanism, but it can also be rediscovered just through intentional exploration. So enjoy the value that you have, appreciate the value of other people and their creativity, and grow your creativity and team up with others so that we can do bigger, cooler projects and make the world really interesting and fun. Okay, my behavioral treatment plan is this week I recommend you take a look at an emotion, a thought, and a behavior you have that is constantly recurring. Think about whether or not that recurring thing is valid, what triggers it, what are the consequences, and how you could challenge it if it returns. How you could challenge it and how you'd like to modify that emotion, thought, or behavior might also influence how you challenge that thing. So think about that, those three things, and come up with ways to challenge those recurring negative influences in your life. Now we've covered everything from the ADHD behavior module, so I'm ready to take questions, and I'll start with the questions on email, and then I'll get to the ones that you leave in the chat, and we'll end with whatever else is on your mind.